The rain fell in cold sheets over the narrow back road that twisted through the pine-covered hills of Echo Ridge, Idaho. Sheriff Dana Whitlock squinted through her windshield, wipers barely keeping up with the storm. A dispatch call had come in, about a wild dog, dragging something along County Road 12. Probably just another coyote with roadkill, she figured, until she rounded the bend. The beam of her headlights swept across a surreal sight. There, standing soaked and motionless in the middle of the road, was a large German shepherd. Mud caked its legs, blood dripped from a gash on its side, and behind it, barely visible, was a crumpled barefoot girl being dragged by the hood of her sweatshirt, limp like a discarded doll. Dana slammed the brakes and jumped out, boots splashing into puddles. The dog let out a low guttural growl as she approached, stepping between her and the child. Its eyes were piercing, intelligent, almost human in their focus. Dana raised her hands slowly. "Easy there." "I'm here to help," she murmured. Inching forward, the dog hesitated, then barked, sharp, insistent, and backed away. Not running, not afraid. It wanted her to follow. Dana knelt beside the girl. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, soaked through, her left arm bent at an unnatural angle. Dried blood crusted over her temple. Dana gently checked her pulse, weak but steady. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" The girl's eyelids fluttered. Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth and whispered something barely audible over the rain. "Run." Then she passed out cold. Heart pounding, Dana radioed for an ambulance. As she turned back to the dog, it was already trotting away, pausing just beyond the tree line, barking sharply, like it was giving instructions. Dana glanced back at the girl, then at the trees. This dog wasn't lost, it was leading. At Echo Ridge Regional Hospital, doctors worked frantically to stabilize the girl. She was severely dehydrated, underweight, and bore scars that weren't from a single accident. Marks on her ankles and wrists, healed over, deep and deliberate. Evidence of long-term restraint, no ID, no backpack. No one had reported a child. Missing in the region in over 6 months. Meanwhile, the dog refused to leave the girl's side, growling at every nurse who approached her. When animal control arrived to remove it, the girl stirred just long enough to cry out and wrap her good arm around its neck. Her first real word, "Stay." Dana stood in the doorway, watching. "Let him stay," she told the nurse quietly. "At least for now." Back at the station, Dana entered the girl into every missing child database she could access. Nothing. Facial recognition failed. Her fingerprints weren't in any system, no record of her anywhere. That night, just past midnight, the hospital's security system was triggered. An unauthorized individual had accessed the records room, the only files missing, the ones related to the girl. Surveillance footage showed nothing but static during the breach, like someone had planned it that way. By morning, the girl still hadn't spoken another word, but she was awake, quiet, watching. The dog, now unofficially named Max, sat dutifully beside her bed, tail flicking once every few seconds. When Dana entered, the girl looked up. Their eyes met. "I don't know where she came from," the attending nurse whispered behind her. "But that dog? I think he saved her life." Dana nodded, but her expression was hardening. Dogs don't just drag injured girls out of the woods. They don't guard them like soldiers. And someone, somewhere, didn't want that girl's story to be told. She leaned in close and said gently, "Sweetheart, when you're ready to talk, we're ready to listen." The girl blinked slowly, then placed her small hand on Max's head, and then, so soft, Dana barely heard it. "He showed me the door they don't want you to find." The hospital room was quiet, lit only by a low bedside lamp. Rain still whispered against the windows. Sheriff Dana Whitlock sat in the corner, a notepad balanced on her knee, though she hadn't written a word in half an hour. The little girl lay awake, propped against pillows, watching her silently. Max, her silent guardian, sat by the bed, never taking his eyes off Dana. The girl hadn't said anything else since the cryptic whisper about a hidden door. She was calm now, but guarded. Too calm for someone who had nearly died alone in the forest, the kind of stillness that doesn't come from peace, but from long practice. "Can you tell me your name?" Dana asked gently. her voice soft. The girl turned her head slowly toward Max as if seeking permission. The dog gave a soft huff. Then the girl said, "Emily?" Dana offered a small smile. "That's a beautiful name, Emily. Do you know your last name?" Emily shook her head. Her eyes flickered with something, confusion maybe, or fear. Dana didn't press. Instead, she changed tack. "Where did Max come from?" Emily's gaze dropped. Her small fingers curled into the dog's fur. "They made him forget the others." Dana blinked. "What do you mean?" "He remembers me," Emily said. "He didn't want to, but he did." That was the last she'd say. Back at the station, Dana pulled every resource she could. Missing child reports, National Registry cross-checks. She sent Emily's photo to neighboring counties, the state, police, even a contact in Homeland Security. Nothing. The strangest part? The girl's fingerprints weren't just missing from public databases. They'd been actively scrubbed. Her file should have triggered a national alert when entered. Instead, it disappeared minutes after it was uploaded. Someone had backdoor access to federal systems and was watching. By the time the FBI called her back, it wasn't to help. "Sheriff Whitlock," the agent said coolly over the phone. "We'll be taking over the case, effective immediately." Dana frowned. "I didn't request federal involvement. Didn't have to. The child falls under a National Protection Act involving cross-border trafficking victims. She's being placed in a secure care facility within 48 hours. You've never even seen her. Protocol," the agent replied. "And for the record, the dog is classified property under federal code. It's coming with us." Dana stared at the receiver after the call ended. That wasn't protocol. That was a shutdown. The next night, while Dana reviewed security footage of the forest near where Emily had been found, she saw something that made her blood run cold. At exactly 3:18 a.m., a black SUV had parked at the tree line for 6 minutes, just long enough for two figures in tactical gear to step out, scan the area and leave. No plates, no headlights, no prints left behind. Dana visited the hospital immediately. When she arrived, Max was pacing restlessly in Emily's room. The dog stopped and stared at her, then gave a low, frustrated bark. Emily was sitting up, eyes wide with panic. "They're coming," she whispered. "They always come at night." Dana crossed the room quickly. "Who, Emily?" The girl was trembling. "The ones who forget names, the ones who make us quiet." Dana didn't fully understand, but her gut told her she didn't have time to figure it out slowly. She called in a deputy to watch the girl and took Max for a walk around the hospital perimeter, hoping to get the dog to reveal more. And then Max stopped near the back fence, barked twice, dug furiously at the dirt near the tree line. Beneath the soil, Dana uncovered a partially buried flash drive, caked in mud, wrapped in gauze. She didn't question it. She pocketed the drive and hurried back to her car. Whatever secrets Emily held, this dog had been trained to protect them. But now Dana had something physical, something they hadn't expected to be found. And for the first time, someone powerful would realize they'd made a mistake. They'd let one child slip through the cracks. Sheriff Dana Whitlock sat alone in her office, the only light coming from her computer screen. The flash drive Max had unearthed was connected and decrypting slowly. Whatever was on it had been hidden for a reason. Its encryption layers weren't amateur work. Outside the glass window, Dana spotted Max sitting patiently under the glow of the hallway bulb, eyes locked on her door. The dog hadn't rested since the flash drive was discovered, not even for a second. The file finished loading. There were 3 folders. The first contained grainy surveillance images, children, maybe 5 or 6 of them, all in identical grey clothing, walking single file down a sterile hallway. The timestamp on the footage was dated 2 years ago, but there was no location metadata. The second folder held medical scans, charts and files labeled in a strange alphanumeric system. Sub J117, BHAV STIM 03, MKL N72. Dana's stomach turned. Each file detailed chemical protocols, behavior patterns, and shocking cognitive tests on children. The third folder was video. Dana clicked play on screen. A cold fluorescent-lit room appeared. 6 children sat motionless on beds, IV tubes snaking from their arms. A man's voice, muffled but clear, spoke in Russian-accented English. Emotion is interruption. They must not feel pain. Only response. Only task. Then, without warning, he gave a verbal command. Object 3. Eliminate the doll. One of the children, Emily, stood up robotically, crossed the room, and tore apart a stuffed bear with her bare hands. Dana closed the laptop and sat back, breathing hard. This wasn't just abuse, this was weaponization. She picked up her phone and made a call. Bill, I need a favor. Bill Yates, a retired intelligence analyst with grey hair and restless hands, met Dana at the diner just outside town. After she showed him a still image of Max, his eyes widened. Where the hell did you find that dog? Why? Dana asked tightly. Because that's not just a rescue dog, that's a GRU asset. Russian military. Bill nodded. During the Cold War, both we and the Soviets experimented with K9 behavioral engineering, conditioning them to detect more than bombs, emotions, patterns, even respond to trauma responses in children. But it never really worked on our side. We stopped. Rumor was the Russians didn't. Dana showed him the video. He paled. This isn't Russian anymore. This is private sector, and very, very illegal. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Emily woke up screaming. She clawed at her sheets, calling out for Max. The nurses rushed in, but she kicked and thrashed until a doctor was forced to sedate her. When Dana returned, the staff was shaken. She kept saying one thing over and over, a nurse said, trembling. Something about numbers in the wall. Dana approached Emily's bed. The girl was groggy, but still murmuring. Dana leaned close. Emily, do you remember where the numbers are? The girl's eyes fluttered open. In the dark rooms, the rooms under the trees. That night, Dana took Max back to the place he had first appeared, with a flashlight, a handgun, and a growing sense of dread. The rain had stopped, but the forest felt even colder. Max didn't hesitate. He sprinted ahead, barking urgently, weaving between trees until he reached a moss-covered rise. There, beneath a pile of fallen branches and stone, Max started to dig. Again, frantic, pawing the earth as if something inside couldn't wait any longer. After 10 minutes, the tip of a rusted metal door was exposed. Dana's flashlight beam flickered across the surface, a military-grade hatch. Max barked and whined, then pressed his body against the hatch and looked up at her. Dana stared at it, heart thudding. They hadn't just been hiding children, they'd been burying something that was never supposed to be found. Sheriff Dana Whitlock crouched by the rusted hatch, heart hammering in her ears. She brushed aside the last layer of dirt. The steel, door was thick and cold to the touch, half swallowed by decades of pine needles and time. There were no markings, no locks, just a small keypad embedded into the surface, its screen long dead. Max paced behind her, restless, growling low. Dana stood and circled the mound. That this thing had remained hidden so close to town, and that no one had ever found it, was deeply unsettling. She scanned the tree line for cameras, drones, signs of tampering. Nothing. Then she noticed something in the dirt. Fresh tracks, boot prints, not hers, at least 2 different sets. That meant someone had been here. Recently. She stepped back, mind racing. If she forced the door open, she risked compromising evidence or worse, triggering a trap. But turning away now wasn't an option either. She called Bill. I found something buried in the forest, she said. Military-style hatch, not on any land survey map. Coordinates? He asked, already typing. She gave them. There was a long pause, then, Jesus Christ, Dana, that's near the old Laramie training grounds. That site was decommissioned in the 80s. But someone's still using it. Bill cursed under his breath. I'll dig. But listen, whatever's under there, you go in with backup and body cams. Dana hung up and glanced at Max. The dog had gone still, nose pointed toward the trees, and then he bolted. Max! She shouted, chasing after him. Max darted between the trees, finally skidding to a stop in front of a large stump. He barked once and started digging at its base. Dana knelt, unsure of what she was about to find. Beneath the roots lay something she didn't expect. A torn hospital wristband. Tiny, child-sized. She held it up to her flashlight. The name space was blank, but a number had been burned into the plastic. NOMS 0417, LX. Max whined, eyes fixed on the wristband. Dana felt a chill crawl up her spine. This wasn't just a place they'd taken children to. This was where they had kept them. The next day, Dana returned with backup, her most trusted deputies all sworn to secrecy. She made them leave phones behind and carry analog radios only. They brought bolt cutters, flashlights, and portable air monitors. The hatch creaked open after 20 minutes of work. The stench that rose from below hit them instantly, musty, metallic, old. They descended the narrow steel ladder slowly, into darkness. The air was stale, but breathable. Flashlights cut across decaying corridors. Mold clung to the walls. The tiles were cracked. Most of the facility was empty. But then they reached room 3. Dana's breath caught. The door was covered in deep gouges, claw marks maybe. Inside, there were 6 child-sized beds lined against the wall. Rusted metal restraints still dangled from the headboards. Scratched into the wall over and over again was the same number, 0417. Her deputy, Hayes, backed up slowly. What was this place? Dana stepped closer. On the wall, smeared. Beneath the numbers was a handprint, too small to belong to an adult. Dried blood, and next to it scrawled in faint red ink, "We remember." Back above ground, as Dana sealed the hatch behind her, Max began barking furiously at the edge of the forest. 3 red laser dots appeared across Dana's chest. "Down!" she screamed. Shots rang out. One of her deputies fell, bleeding. The others returned fire blindly as the assailants vanished into the trees. Silent, trained, gone within seconds, Dana dragged the injured man to cover. Max stood protectively beside her, snarling at the darkness. Whoever had buried this place hadn't forgotten it. They were watching, and now they knew she had seen it. Sheriff Dana Whitlock sat alone in the hospital waiting room, her clothes still stained with mud and her deputy's blood. Hayes had survived the ambush, barely. A bullet had torn through his shoulder, but he was stable now. The other deputies were shaken but unharmed. Dana couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been allowed to live. They wanted to send a warning. She looked up as Bill Yates stepped through the sliding doors. He carried a worn leather satchel and a face lined with worry. "I analyzed those documents from the flash drive," he said, taking a seat beside her. "They weren't just training children, Dana. They were programming them." She frowned. "You mean like brainwashing?" He nodded grimly. Trauma-based conditioning, extreme repetition, sedatives. They called it neural compliance engineering. They weren't just trying to erase personalities. They were building obedience. Dana clenched her jaw. "Why children?" "Because children's minds adapt fast, and they don't fight back the same way adults do. The Russians started it. Some of our black-budget groups kept going after. The Cold War ended. Private labs, off-grid sites like the one you found," she whispered. "They turned them into weapons." Bill nodded slowly. "And the moment you opened that hatch, you made yourself a target." That afternoon, Dana returned to her office, only to find the building eerily quiet. No phones rang, no voices echoed from down the hall. Her heart sank. Inside her office sat a man in a black suit. His expression was calm, unreadable. A DHS badge lay on her desk, next to a sealed folder. "Sheriff Whitlock," he said politely, "I need you to come with me. This investigation now falls under federal jurisdiction." Dana crossed her arms. "What investigation?" He smiled thinly. "That's classified. But we have reason to believe you've come into contact with restricted government property, both electronic and biological." "You mean the child and the dog?" The man didn't answer. Dana stepped closer. "Let me be clear. Emily is not government property. She's a little girl who was tortured, drugged, and dumped in my forest. She's not going anywhere." The man stood. That wasn't a request. Before Dana could react, 2 more agents appeared in the doorway. Max began barking furiously from the hallway outside. Dana's hand drifted toward her holstered weapon, but then she froze. Emily was standing behind the agents. She wasn't supposed to be out of her hospital bed. The agents turned, confused. One reached for her. "Emily," Dana said slowly. "What are you doing here?" The girl's voice was cold, mechanical. "You shouldn't have opened the door," then she collapsed. The agents rushed to her side. Dana used the moment to grab the sealed folder on her desk and bolt out the back exit. She ran to her cruiser, where Max was already waiting in the back seat. They sped off down the back road, gravel spraying behind them. They didn't stop until they reached Bill's off-grid cabin 10 miles out of town. Inside, they tore open the sealed folder. Dana's eyes widened. Inside were pages of internal memos between private contractors and federal agencies, dating back over a decade. One memo was marked, Subject 0417, showing signs of autonomy, immediate recall recommended. Emily, another. Note, handwritten and barely legible, was circled in red ink. Terminate the girl if compromised. "The dog will revert," Max growled beside her. As if understanding the threat written on the page, Dana turned to Bill. "They built her to obey, but she broke free. That's why Max protects her." "She's not the only one," Bill whispered. "There were others. If we find them, if we expose them, we can make this public, force an investigation. But they'll erase us before that happens," Dana said quietly. Bill nodded. "Then we better move fast." Rain pelted the roof of Bill's off-grid cabin as wind hissed through the pines. Dana stood at the window, watching for headlights. Helicopters, anything. The sealed file folder lay open on the table behind her. Pages of names, partial addresses, coordinates, and code names were scattered across the wood like puzzle pieces from hell. Max sat still, eyes never leaving the door. "Found something," Bill called from his laptop. "Deep in the metadata of the surveillance folder, there's a corrupted reference, something tagged Echo 7. Same redacted name appears on another memo. It's listed under a location in Idaho, rural farm property. Coordinates match an old Firewatch tower." Dana crossed the room. "Could it be one of the other kids?" "Possibly," Bill said. "The document calls it a successful isolation unit until the subject went dark 4 months ago, no contact since." "Meaning someone may have escaped again," Dana murmured. Bill nodded grimly. "Or they're buried in the woods, same as Emily would have been if Max hadn't intervened." Dana closed the laptop. "Then we go there, tonight." The drive to Idaho was tense. Emily stayed behind, safely hidden in the care of a trusted nurse Bill had once worked with at a VA hospital. Dana hated leaving her, but the risk was too high. If they got caught, Emily couldn't fall back into their hands. By the time they reached the rural fire tower, night had deepened. The place looked abandoned, overgrown grass, rusted fence, a small cabin near the base with no visible lights. "Max," growled low. Something in the air felt wrong. Dana crept forward, gun drawn. Bill followed, carrying a flashlight and a body cam rig. The door to the cabin was slightly ajar. Dana nudged it open and stepped inside. The air was stale. Dust swirled in the beam of Bill's flashlight. An old mattress lay in the corner, surrounded by stacked cans, water bottles, children's books, and drawings. Crude sketches filled a corkboard above the desk. Faces, numbers, symbols. Then Dana spotted it, etched into the wood floor near the mattress. 0417 plus 0419. Home, Bill whispered. There was another one. Thought 19. That was another subject number in the files. Suddenly, Max barked sharply, lunging toward the back door. A noise. Footsteps. Dana rushed out just in time to see a shadow dart into the woods. She gave chase, Max sprinting ahead like a missile. Trees blurred around her, branches scraping her face. Whoever they were, they moved fast, unnaturally fast. Finally, the figure tripped over a root and hit the ground hard. Dana raised her gun. Max stood over the figure, snarling. "Don't move," Dana ordered, but the figure didn't fight. It was a teenage boy, maybe 16, thin, dirt-smeared, eyes wide with terror. His wrists were scarred, old restraint marks. On his forearm, tattooed in faded black ink, was 0419, the boy spoke softly. "Is she alive?" Dana's breath caught. "Emily?" He nodded. She was always the strongest. They hated that about her. Dana lowered the gun. "We need your help. They're trying to erase everything. We need to go public." But the boy shook his head. "They've already started. The moment you opened the hatch, the countdown began." "What countdown?" "The purge," he said. They have a kill list, everyone connected, even me. Back at the cabin, Dana relayed everything to Bill. The boy, Matthew, drank water silently, staring into space like he hadn't spoken in months. "There's a server," he finally said. "It's not local. They used it to control the training. The drugs, even the audio commands, it has everything, every file, video, every child." "Where is it?" Dana asked. "Montana," Matthew whispered. "Buried beneath an old veterinary compound. Codename Project Pinevale." Bill's face went white. "That name was redacted in every document," he muttered. "We have one shot at this." Dana looked at Max, then at Matthew. "We take it down," she said, "and we do it before they take us down." The Montana night was colder than anything Dana had expected. The stars were hidden behind heavy clouds as she, Bill, Max, and Matthew crept toward the perimeter of the old veterinary compound. The building sat partially hidden by towering pines, its windows shattered and rust eating away at the corrugated metal roof. "This place looks abandoned," Dana whispered, scanning the fence. Matthew shook his head. "They left it like this on purpose, so no one would get suspicious, but the real work is underground." Bill pulled out blueprints he'd acquired through a network of former contractors. "There's a service hatch beneath the east wing. It leads to a secure server bunker. That's where they control everything, all the recordings, drugs, even remote commands." Dana nodded. "Then that's where we go." Max growled low, ears perked. Dana patted the dog's head. "Good boy. We'll need you more than ever." They approached the hatch quietly. Matthew worked the rusted padlock with tools Dana hadn't seen before. The lock gave a satisfying click. As the heavy metal door creaked open, the smell of damp earth and machine oil greeted them. They climbed down a narrow stairwell, flashlights piercing the darkness. The server room was a cold chamber humming with low vibrations. Banks of blinking machines lined the walls, wires spilling like veins across the floor. Bill knelt at a terminal and began downloading files. Suddenly the lights flickered and died. The humming stopped. A harsh voice crackled over the intercom. "Unauthorized access detected. Lockdown initiated." Red emergency lights bathed the room in an ominous glow. Dana grabbed her radio. "We're trapped." Footsteps echoed from above, the sound of heavily armed guards moving fast. Matthew's eyes darted to a nearby vent. "We have to move," he urged. Bill finished the download with a relieved sigh. "Got it," he said, stuffing the drive in his pocket. Suddenly the hatch slammed shut. Max barked furiously, the sound sharp and warning. Dana turned, gun drawn. As the guards burst through the stairwell door, chaos erupted. Shots rang out in the confined space. Dana fired, hitting one guard in the shoulder, but another returned fire, grazing her arm. Max lunged, teeth flashing, taking down a second attacker. With a brutal snap, Matthew ducked behind the server racks, clutching his side, blood seeping through his fingers. "We have to get out now." Dana shouted. She grabbed Matthew, pulling him toward the vent Max had spotted. The opening was narrow but just wide enough. One by one they slipped inside, Max going last. Inside the cramped shaft, the sound of footsteps and shouting echoed beneath. "Them!" Dana crawled, the rough metal scraping her skin. They emerged in a storage room filled with crates stamped with government seals. Dana's heart pounded. The exit was near, but so was danger. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, tall, imposing, with cold eyes that pierced the dim light. "Sheriff Whitlock," he said smoothly, voice dripping with menace. Dana froze. "It seems you're more resourceful than I anticipated." "Who are you?" she demanded, wincing from her arm wound. "I'm the director of Project Pinevale," he replied. "And you've just endangered everything," Max growled low, stepping protectively in front of Dana. The man smiled. "I'm afraid this is where your little crusade ends." Suddenly, from the darkness behind him, Emily appeared. Her eyes were glassy but focused. She stepped forward, and with a sudden jerk, the tension in the room snapped. Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. One Dana recognized immediately. The remote override. Emily's fingers trembled slightly. As she held the small device up, the remote override for the entire Project Pinevale system, the cold eyes of the man who called himself the director locked onto hers, a mixture of fury and disbelief flickering across his face. "You don't understand what that device can do," he hissed. "It controls everything. With it, we hold the power to silence every voice, erase every trace." Dana's heart raced. "Then why give it to her?" The director smirked. "Because I underestimated her, and because I thought you'd never make it this far." Emily took a deep breath. "No more silence." She pressed a button. Instantly, alarms wailed throughout the compound. The hum of servers ramped up to a high-pitched whine, then began to overload. Sparks flew from the racks. Lights flickered and died one by one. The director's composure cracked. "No, you'll destroy everything." But Emily was resolute. "We're destroying your lies." Bill grabbed Dana's arm. "We need to get out. This place is going to blow." Max barked urgently, leading the way back through the labyrinthine corridors. They sprinted, the building shaking beneath their feet. Behind them, explosions ripped through the server room, flames licking up through vents and shattered windows. Dana helped Matthew, who was still weak but determined. At last, they burst outside into the freezing Montana night air. The compound erupted in a towering fireball, lighting the sky. Dana looked back, tears stinging her eyes. Emily collapsed into her arms, exhausted but free. Days later, the fallout was undeniable. Federal agencies scrambled to contain the damage, but the leaked files, now copied and spread by Bill's contacts, ignited a firestorm. The public demanded answers. Congress opened hearings, and for the first time in years, the victims, children branded as numbers turned into weapons, were given a voice. Dana stood before a packed room of officials, Max by her side, Emily clutching her hand. She spoke with quiet strength. "We owe these children the truth. We owe them justice, and we must ensure that no one ever uses innocence as a weapon again." Behind her, the director's name was scrubbed from government databases. His contractors arrested or vanished. Emily and Matthew began the slow process of healing, surrounded by a community that refused to forget. Max, the mysterious K9 who had led them through darkness, became a symbol of hope. A guardian not just of one girl, but of a truth that demanded to be heard. And as the sun rose over the mountains, Dana knew their fight was only beginning. But this time, they had the world watching.